Are you gambling or actually investing? Most people think investing is about finding the next big stock or timing the market perfectly. But here's what nobody tells you. The investors making real money, they're not doing either of those things. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you the 5 rules that separate people who gamble from people who actually build wealth, and why everything you've been taught about investing is setting you up to fail. Look, I lost $12,000 in my first year of investing. $12,000. I was chasing hot stocks, panic selling when things dipped, basically doing everything wrong. I thought I was investing. I was actually gambling. Then I studied what actually works. Not the flashy stuff on finance TikTok, but the boring strategies that billionaires, institutional investors, and people who retire at 40 actually use. I spent over 300 hours analyzing portfolios, reading SEC filings, talking to financial advisors, and testing everything with real money. Here are the 3 questions we're answering today. Why do foundations matter more than growth opportunities? How does timing completely change your investment strategy? And what's the system that removes emotion from your wealth building? These 5 rules changed everything for me. Let's break them down. Here's rule number 1, and it's going to feel boring, but it's critical. You know what kills most new investors? They skip the foundation and go straight for the moonshots. I have a friend, let's call him Jake. 2 years ago, Jake got into stocks market. He had $4,000 saved up and immediately threw it all into a random company stocks someone mentioned on social media. No emergency fund, credit card debt at 22% interest, but he was convinced these stocks were going 5x. 6 months later, those stocks crashed 30%. But here's the kicker. His car broke down that same month. $2,500 repair. He had to put it on that same credit card because his entire savings was locked in crashed stocks he couldn't afford to sell. See, this is what I call building on sand. You can't build wealth if your foundation is shaky. Think of it like constructing a skyscraper. Would you start building the penthouse before pouring the foundation? No, that's insane. But that's exactly what people do with investing. Here's the framework I use. I call it the Foundation First Checklist. Number 1, 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund. Number 2, avoid interest-bearing debt. Number 3, basic coverage, health, car, renters, or homeowners. Only after those 3 are solid do you start pursuing growth investments. Here's why this matters. Investing without a foundation means you're forced to sell at the worst possible times. Car breaks down? Sell your stocks at a loss. Medical emergency? Cash out investments and pay penalties. Lose your job? Liquidate everything. The foundation isn't about being conservative. It's about giving your investments time to actually compound without life forcing you to interrupt them. Jake learned this the hard way. He's rebuilt now. Emergency fund, debt gone, capturing his match, and now his stocks investments can actually sit and grow because he's not one emergency away from panic selling. The lesson? Secure the foundation before you pursue expansion. Because without it, you're not investing, you're gambling on not having any emergencies. All right, rule number 2 gets interesting because this is where most cookie-cutter advice completely falls apart. There is no best investment. There's only the best investment for your timeline and your goal. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Last year, 2 people asked me about investing. First person, 28 years old, saving for retirement, 35 plus years until they need the money. Second person, 34 years old, saving for a house down payment, needs the money in 18 months. You know what happens if I give them the same advice? One of them wins, one of them gets destroyed. Here's the truth about investing that no one wants to say out loud. Timeline changes everything. Time horizon isn't just a factor, it's the factor. Let me break this down with real numbers. If you have 30 years, you can ride out market crashes. The S&P 500 has averaged 10% annually over the long term, but it's had years where it dropped 30 to 40%. If you're young and you don't need that money, beautiful, buy the dip, let it recover. But if you need that money in 2 years and the market drops 35%, you're screwed. You either take the loss or you delay your goal. The biggest mistake I see? People treating all their money the same. They put their house down payment in the same aggressive growth stocks as their retirement money. Then the market dips right when they're ready to buy, and suddenly they can't afford the house. Your intention and timeline dictate your strategy, not your age, not some random percentage rule, your specific goals and when you need the money. Now, here's rule 3, and this one is wild because the math seems impossible until you actually see it. Most people think you need big money to build wealth. But compound interest doesn't care how much you start with. It cares about time and consistency. Let me give you the most mind-blowing example I've ever calculated. 2 investors. Investor A starts at 25, invests $200 a month for 10 years, then stops completely. Total invested, $24,000. Investor B starts at 35, invests $200 a month for 30 years straight. Total invested, $72,000. Who has more at 65? Investor A, by almost $100,000. Same monthly amount. Investor A invested less total money, but had more time for it to compound. This is what I call the consistency multiplier. Small amounts repeated consistently over long periods create exponential outcomes, not linear, exponential. Here's why this works. Compound interest means you earn returns on your returns. Year 1, you earn interest on your principal. Year 2, you earn interest on your principal plus last year's interest. Year 20, you're earning interest on 2 decades of accumulated returns. Let's make this concrete. $300 a month, invested at 10% annual return. After 10 years, $61,000. After 20 years, $227,000. After 30 years, $678,000. Same $300 every single month. That's the difference between buying a new car every 3 years or retiring a millionaire. But here's what kills people. Consistency sounds boring. It's not sexy. There's no thrill. You're not doubling your money overnight. You're just putting away a few $100 every month like clockwork. And that's exactly why it works. See, the market is going to have good years and terrible years. In 2022, the S&P dropped 18%. In 2023, it was up 24%. If you're trying to time it, buying high, selling low, jumping in and out, you miss the recovery. You miss the compounding. But if you're investing the same amount every single month, regardless of what the market's doing, you're buying more shares when prices are low, fewer when they're high. It's called dollar cost averaging, and it removes the need to predict anything. Rule number 4 is about to save you from the mistake that wipes out most investors. You know what's terrifying? Putting all your money in one thing and watching it go to zero while you're powerless to stop it. In 2021, I watched someone I know lose everything. Not just most of their money, everything. They had $45,000, their entire life savings, in one stock. One. They were convinced it was going to 10x. The company seemed solid, revenue was growing, the CEO was charismatic. Then the earnings report came out. Massive fraud, accounting scandal. Stock dropped 94% in 3 days. $45,000 became $2,700. They couldn't sell fast enough. They couldn't recover. It was just gone. This is why diversification isn't optional. It's not conservative investing or playing it safe. It's basic risk management. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot predict which specific company will fail. You might be smart. You might do research. You might be right 80% of the time. But that 20%, if you're concentrated in the wrong pick, it can wipe out everything. Think of it like this. If you own one stock and it goes to zero, you lose 100%. If you own 50 stocks and one goes to zero, you lose 2%. That's not theory, that's just math. Here's how I structure diversification. I call it layered protection. Layer 1. Diversify across companies. I own index funds with hundreds of companies, not individual stocks. Layer 2. Diversify across sectors. Tech, healthcare, energy, finance. When one struggles, another thrives. Layer 3. Diversify across asset classes, stocks, real estate. They don't all move together. This isn't about being paranoid. It's about not being stupid. I use index funds for exactly this reason. An S&P 500 index fund gives me exposure to 500 companies. If Apple crashes, I have 499 others. If the entire tech sector struggles, I have healthcare, consumer goods, industrials, financials, all still working. Diversification doesn't mean you won't lose money in a downturn. It means you won't lose everything to one bad bet. And here's the kicker. Historically, diversified portfolios don't just reduce risk, they often produce better returns over time because you're not trying to pick winners, you're capturing the overall growth of the market. The lesson? Distributed exposure protects you from specific failures. One company can collapse, an entire diversified market, that's never gone to zero. And here's the final rule, the one that separates amateurs from pros even when they have the same knowledge. Your biggest enemy in investing isn't the market. It's you, your emotions, your fear, your greed. March 2020, COVID crashes the market. S&P 500 down 34% in 5 weeks. I watched my portfolio drop $18,000. $18,000. Gone. Every day, I'd open my app, see more red, feel sick. My brain was screaming, sell, get out, save what's left. But I didn't sell. Want to know why? Because I had a system that didn't let me. I had automated my investments. I couldn't stop them without going through a whole process, logging in, changing settings, confirming multiple times. By the time I'd do all that, the emotional panic would pass. And that system saved me. Because guess what happened next? The market recovered fully by August. If I'd sold in March, I'd have locked in an $18,000 loss. Instead, I bought more shares at discounted prices with my automated investments. And by December, I was up significantly. This is what I call emotion-proof investing. You build systems that work regardless of how you feel, because feelings are terrible financial advisors. Here's the science. When the market drops, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, fires up. It's screaming, danger, run. That's the same part that kept your ancestors from being eaten by lions. But it's horrible at investing. Similarly, when markets are soaring and everyone's making money, you get FOMO, fear of missing out. You want to jump in, buy high, chase returns. That's your dopamine system hijacking your decision-making. Both responses lose you money. Panic selling locks in losses. FOMO buying locks in overpaying. So here's how I remove emotion entirely. Number 1, automate contributions. Same amount, same day, every month. No decisions. Number 2, set it and ignore it. I check my portfolio quarterly, not daily. Number 3, rebalance on a schedule. Once a year, I adjust allocations based on my predetermined targets, not based on feelings. Number 4, write down my rules. When I panic, I read my own investment policy statement. It reminds me of the plan when emotions are loud. Think of it like this. Pilots don't wing it during emergencies. They follow checklists, systems, because when stress is high, human judgment fails. Your investment system is your checklist. When the market crashes and your brain is panicking, you follow the system. When the market's soaring and you want to throw more money in, you follow the system. Systems remove the need to be emotionally perfect. They make the right decision automatic even when you're terrified or excited. That's how you stay in the market long enough to actually win. So let's bring this home. Build your foundation before chasing growth. Match your strategy to your timeline. Stay consistent with small actions that compound. Diversify to survive specific failures. Automate systems that remove emotion. Those 5 rules, they're not exciting. They won't make you rich overnight, but they're exactly what works when you zoom out over decades. So next time someone tells you investing is about finding the next big thing, just remember, the people getting rich aren't finding rockets. They're building foundations that don't collapse when things get hard.